gardened, never grown a winter garden, I'm hoping by the time we finish tonight, I'm hoping to inspire you that you're going to go home and pick a spot and actually plant one. And the principles are really simple. You can get all kinds of complex instructions and directions in books, but you come back to the way God designed things, it's really very simple. Not use this little clicker here yet. Okay, loosen the soil up, and that's actually optional. You don't even have to loosen the soil. You can go out on plain. I started my garden on a spot that was basically dead. It was yellow, light, colored stuff that had no organic material, totally dead. I mean, the weeds weren't even growing there. And you can loosen it up to help things get along. But even that step is optional. The real key is step number 2 right here. You spread this organic material on top. I'm talking about compost, mulch, manures, all of this organic material. And I'm talking about nice, really thick layers here, not just a sprinkling on the surface of the ground. I start off with 4 to 6 inches of compost and maybe another 2 to 4 inches of manure on top of that. That's what you put on top. You can mulch on top of that even. You plant into that, the roots, get the roots going down into the earth underneath it, but this material right there provides everything your plants need. Then you plant your seeds, or you can put in these little baby plants like you get at Lowe's. They've already started in these little packs. And then you water it. And that's all there is to it. So the key is this, step number 2, putting this organic material right here, and it grows. That's the key. You don't need fertilizers, chemicals, just do that. Loosening the soil. You can use a shovel. Once your soil starts getting good, it's full of earthworms and all that stuff, and I just feel tremendous pain every time my shovel slices through all the earthworms as I stick it down and turn them in the dirt. So I almost also don't use a shovel for loosening. When I use a spading fork right here, if I want to loosen something up, it just kind of spears in, goes down in there, and you can loosen up the soil nicely without damaging the creatures there. The other trick in loosening the soil is you don't turn the soil over. Over time, as you go from one garden season to the next, you're going to build up organic material in that top layer soil. Even if you started with dead yellow soil, it's going to turn brown and then black, crumbly, full of worms. It's going to turn into really great stuff. You don't want to dig a shovel and turn it over and put that stuff underneath with more dead dirt on top. You want to loosen it, but you want the stratification there. You want your mineral stuff on the bottom, your organic material near the surface right here. That's the way God designed it to be naturally. You go out into the forest, and what do you see? The forest grows great. Nobody's out there tilling it, rototilling it, all of this kind of stuff. You don't need to do that. What happens? The pine needles, the leaves, everything falls and decomposes on the surface. And in the lower layers of that layer are decomposed. On top, there's more non-decomposed stuff. And the worms move it down, the bugs move it down, water flows through it. Roots can grow up into it. Fungi send their mycelium through it. Yeah. Yes. That's what I do. Yeah. So, as I was showing you these tools here, a rake is really nice for spreading and moving around the compost material, this mulch stuff, as you build up this bed of organic material. And if you haven't seen it before, I want to introduce you to something called a broad fork. You see this thing right here? There's a bar like this with a bunch of tongs coming out of the bottom of it. And then there's 2 handles there. Really simple thing. I'll show you how to use it. You take it here. I'm going to make a little, just loosen up this area right here and make that into a garden bed here. Of course, I've already grown on this for several years, so the soil is nice and black and crumbly underneath there now. But you step on it, press those tongs down into the ground, and then you start pulling back, and you pull back a full 90 degrees till those tongs lift up like this. They're just crumbling, loosening up the soil, but they're not turning it over like taking a shovel and turning over a shovel. So your stratification is still there, your surface stuff is still on the surface, your deep stuff is still deep, but you put these tongs through it and lifted it up like that. You step back a step, do the same thing over again, push it down like that, and you keep step by step. In just a couple of minutes, the whole garden bed's loosened up just like that. Really simple, quick, easy. Again, you don't have to do the broad fork. It's just something I've discovered is really great for gardening. But you can just use your regular spading fork and loosen it. Good place. There's on the internet a place called Johnny's Selected Seeds. It's in Maine. It's mail order catalog. Johnny's Selected Seed in Maine. They've got all kinds of seed, organic gardens, of everything in that catalog. A really great mail order service. They've got every kind of thing you want for organic gardening there. That Johnny's Selected Seed. Now here's what you want right here. This is your compost pile. See the compost building up in there? It's building up there. I build it up about compost, like that's a year's worth of compost that's been building up in there. Now I've taken the end off of here, opened it up, I'm shoveling out of here, and I'm gonna go spread it on top of the ground on the spot we were showing we're loosening up there. So how do you make compost? Number one, beside my sink is this little stainless steel compost bin. And every single vegetable, plant scrap, old food that's getting moldy in the refrigerator, everything goes into the compost pile. Nothing goes into the trash except non-compostable stuff. Everything goes out to the compost pile. We can haul this out multiple times per day. With whatever food we've made, scraps, anything you've trimmed off of the food, leftover food, spoiled food, everything goes out to the compost pile. Throw it in there. Now, besides all your kitchen garbage here, brown paper compost, brown cardboard, here's these like paper towel things, brown paper, but any of this brown paper is just simple wood fiber that's made into the paper. It's clean, it's safe, and it composts wonderful. Earthworms love brown paper. You'd be amazed at what they do. This totally disappears into your compost as it's composting. I don't use cardboard that's glossy. It has colored printing on it. A lot of those paints they use in these bright colored printing where they print pictures on a smooth glossy cardboard, they use toxic pigments. There's lead in a lot of those paints. There's cadmium in some of them. You don't want lead and cadmium, these kind of toxic chemicals in your garden there. But the simple stuff like that, brown paper, when you see this type of printing here, is they use a soy-based inks for this. Newspapers goes in here fine.
Where do you get that lower compost mix?
Amazon.
Can't buy them in the store.
Oh, probably you could in the right store. I don't know. I think we got ours in there. And I've seen them in ceramic. I've seen them in plastic. I've seen them in different things. My mom has a bowl she sits beside, an old plastic Tupperware bowl. I like this that's kind of covered up and out of sight, and in case it's kind of ugly looking, until I take it out. But any container will work. Just don't throw it in the trash. It goes to the compost pile. Yes, corn cobs, corn husks, totally decomposed. You would be amazed at what decomposes. all of this stuff. I mean, I throw little twigs in there. You throw the leaves, you know, if you're trimming bushes, they go in there. If you mow the lawn, the grass clippings go in there. Leaves that fall down go in there. You can throw pine needles in. You know, there's all kinds of stuff goes. Anything that's organic plant waste of some kind goes into there. And you need to keep it moist. We tend to have dry weather here. If it's dry during the summer, when you're watering it or whatever, hose down the compost. So you want moisture in there. All of this stuff takes moisture. Bacteria takes moisture. Fungi take moisture. Earthworms and bugs, all this stuff needs. So keep it damp. Not soggy, but you know, you want it damp. You don't want it to dry out. A dry compost pile will stay dry forever. It won't keep it moist. You know, we dump what if there's oil in something that goes out there. I mean, oil's an organic thing. There'll be some bacteria that uses it, and you know, it's an organic compound. So yeah. You know, a lot of people, you know, I've read that are not vegetarian and have a lot of meat scraps and stuff, is recommended that you don't put meat, you know, scraps in there, that type of thing. A lot of different diseases and things that could be transmitted to humans can be in that, and you don't want that spreading into your garden right there. The safe thing to do with animal scraps is bury them, you know, like a dead animal. You got a dead possum or raccoon, you know, you dig a hole. I usually dig a hole in the garden bed, but I dig it and put it under the mineral dirt. I don't put it on top of this organic layer of compost that I'm working. So then as you start throwing the kitchen scraps out there, then you put here, you notice here, see here's a layer of pine needles and leaves. If you wanted some rule, and this is a really rough rule that you don't have to follow, but about half and half, 50% green stuff or wet stuff or rotten stuff, fruits, green fruit, and then about half carbon type stuff. In other words, pine needles, dry leaves, dry straw, the brown cardboard. So about a 50-50 mix of the carbonation to the high nitrogen type things going in. But it's not critical. I never mix my compost piles. Some people mix them and turn them and aerate them. I just throw everything in, whatever I've got at the time. And like if I've got a bunch of garbage, you know, in there from the kitchen right here, then I throw a layer of cover it up with, you know, some of the carbon, the dry brown carbonaceous stuff. And then there'll be more, you know, kitchen scraps going on top of that, green stuff, you know, terrible stuff that all goes in there. Here, one time when I was starting, I was using a lot of straw. Got a lot of straw. I was putting straw in addition to all the green type garbage right there. Here, I made a simple, just wood pallet stacked up in a square there. I think I ran a couple of screws through it to hold it together and built the compost up in there. By the way, you'll fill this full of compost over and over, and it just composts down, decays down right there. Here, we have some pine trees. Pick up all these pine. By the way, pine cones don't compost. At the end of the year, you'll dig it up, they're still there. You know, I mean, maybe in 20 years they would compost, but you don't put them in a compost pile. They just get in your way when you're working it. But the pine needles, weeds, everything, they all go in there. Here we're cleaning out a garden bed here, getting all of the old plants out. We take these, all of this goes into the compost pile. Or if you have the option, you can throw all the old plants to the chickens. And the chickens will get what they want out of them, recycle it for you. Then it's really composted. We take this, you know, the chicken straw here, after a while it gets all dirty, messed up, it's full of chicken manure. And then throw that in the compost pile. Besides throwing in the compost pile, you can just use it as a direct mulch here. Building up, see here's this was built up on compost and stuff before, but it's growing now, it's fairly tall, and I've just added a fresh layer of chicken straw underneath there on top of it. Keep adding organic material. You never want dirt to show in your garden. You always want a thick layer of organic material of some kind on there. It kind of helps keep weeds out of the garden. and it's, it's continually decomposing and supplying the nutrients to keep your plants growing really good with what they need there. There's some more where is in there. Here, one year I got a bunch of straw bales here, put them in sort of a hollow square here. Actually, it was kind of a wedge-shaped piece, so it was a bit of a trapezoid rather than a square, but a hollow space in there, and that was my compost bin. I just throw everything in it. By the time you've composted there for a year, this ring of hay bales you put around here have all decomposed, starting to break down and stuff, and I pull them apart, and they become straw going into the next compost pile, that we made, and put up some new hay bales for that. But, or just some of them we just took and sprayed on top of our garden beds there. Here you see some of the nice composted beds right here, but they can still use a layer of mulch or compost here. Once the plants are growing, you want them big enough that you're not breaking them down and burying them by adding stuff out here. So it's often easier to put a lot of stuff on first and then just kind of make it a hole and put your plants through it there. In more recent years, I made this right here, actually put together some wood, made up this. It's got a piece on the end right here held in by 4 bolts. I just take those off and get out the compost. This is the end. If you look here, this is what you want here. You've got this solid here of compost that's built up. This is the best, most wonderful stuff you can make. This is what's going to make your garden grow right here. Now, if you don't already have a compost pile, what are you going to do tomorrow when you go out to start? Well, you can go to Lowe's and you can buy sacks of compost, you can buy sacks of manure. It won't be as good as what you've got here, but it'll work. You get started. They've got various organic material in there. Don't use only the compost. Use the compost plus bags of manure and stuff in there. The compost that you tend to get in the bags is like wood chips with some composted material mixed in with the wood chips, which is okay. Again, don't dig it into your garden bed. Lay it on top. If you take and dig this stuff in, all of that wood down there will suck the nitrogen out, and your plants can actually be nutrient deprived. But by pouring it on top, there's no problem. The roots go down, they come up, get what they need, but it doesn't suck the crumb out of it. So you just pour all of this stuff on top if you want. But don't dig it in, don't turn it in, don't rototill it in. Just lay it on top. Like I said, the most you're going to do is just loosen the soil a little bit, and even that's optional. Yes? No. Yeah. You can probably do either one. I always put the compost down. It's already composted. It's turning into soil as well. And then I put a layer of manure on top of that. Sort of like if you think of the forest, okay, you've got this nice composted layer of stuff and some animal walks by and leaves a pile of droppings on it, okay? It'll go down into it. Mycelium will go up into it. It may even send little rootlets up into it. I once had a thing of compost about this deep underneath some cabbages, and I was harvesting, pulling them up. I was amazed. There was a million little roots that had come up through that compost, pulling all the nutrients out of it. The plants know what to do. The fungi, mycelium, they know what to do. They got all these little bugs and worms, they know what to do. You just lay this food out there for them, and they'll do all the work for you.
How often do you water or keep it damp?
Whatever it takes. We have during the winter, we get some rain here and some moisture, but otherwise it takes regular watering here. We live in a very dry type of climate here. This time of year, there's no rain at all, and I turn on the sprinkler out there every few days. When you planted new seeds or starting, you'll want to do it every day. Once the plants get larger and they've got big roots down there and you've got a nice layer of mulch, pull back a little bit of that mulch and see, is it nice and moist down there? Then you're okay. If it's starting to seem a little dry, run the water some more. No. Compost only, that's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic. If it's aerated okay, it's nice. If you get too much water on it and it gets soggy, you get an anaerobic condition. Anaerobic bacteria are the ones that make this really kind of a sewer stink smell that you don't like and don't want. Yeah, if your compost pile is starting to do that, it needs more air and less water. Yeah, your compost pile should not stink. It should have a nice, sweet, earthy smell to it. So here's a little closer look here. You can see the material. This, a year's worth of huge amounts of debris has all compressed down to just this nice, solid composty stuff. But notice it's full of little twiglets and half kind of, not everything is totally like, there's all kinds of little stuff in there. And that's great, that's fine. You want that variety because different plants will use different things. Now, you take this, shovel it out on your wheelbarrow and take a closer look at it, and you're gonna see it's full of earthworms. And of course, those are the big things. You can't see all of the protozoas and the nematodes, the bacterias, the mycelium, all of the other stuff that's in there. But the earthworms are big enough you can see those. And there may be 1,000 earthworms in one shovelful. And so by the time you got a wheelbarrow there, you have so many worms you're taking out there. I mean, worms are processing all of this material and they move it down into the soil. And they bring up and they put out fulvic acid and other things that are really, they process these materials and make them even more available to the plants. Yes? Right, so what you do, you spread out the compost you get from those, you put a lot of manure with it, you start putting out, you'd be surprised, a worm will come from somewhere. You didn't have no idea there was worms there, and suddenly you'll find worms growing in it. If you feed them, if you're totally worm-free, you can, buy or order earthworms from somewhere and add them there, but it's, I started off with dead yellow dirt with no organic material, no worms, and there was worms. And of course, once you get the place going organic, there's just no problem. You don't have to import worms. They seem to come there. Yes? Well, you can use, if you've only got a patio, you can get containers. Container gardening is more of a challenge. The bigger the container, the better it'll be. The problem with containers are they dry out. And they dry out, everything's all over. One of the tricks to using container is don't just use potting mix. It dries out super fast. You want dirt, soil. Remember how the garden, you've got the mineral soil and you're adding this. You need soil in there in addition to the organic material. So if you're trying to do container gardening, be sure you've got soil. The soil will hold the water, whereas the potting mix stuff, you want to have some of that on top. It'll dry out in a day. You'll come back and everything will be dry and dead. What's that? I've done some of those, and they work good, particularly the raised beds where you don't have a bottom. It's like a container. But you've just put up sides and built it up. In a sense, a lot of my garden beds are sort of kind of heaped up raised. They're kind of, every time you pile this material up, you're raised above the level of the ground that it was below before. But you can use wooden boards to pile in more, keep it nice and neat, keep it in a framework there. Here you can see we've taken the compost here and spread it out. I've loosened up the soil a little bit. We spread it out there. One of the things you'll notice here for managing weeds in the path spaces, you notice wherever there's dirt, weeds are going to grow. And then some of the things you see, I've got a lot of weeds. It's like I had to go through the weed eater every week, to kind of keep the weeds down in the paths. And what I did then a few years ago is I filled all of the paths full of several inches of just wood chips, bark chip, to make a planting thing. And then it kind of shades out the weeds, and if weeds start, well, it's loose stuff and they come right out. As far as weeding in your garden beds, you've got so much loose, crumbly stuff. If a weed comes up, pull it out like that, it's like nothing. It's not like hard. You're not fighting weeds with roots that are tied in. They just slip right out, and it takes 2 seconds to weed your garden bed if you get them in a small thing there. So here we've got the compost laid out in the garden bed shape there. My son is not into gardening. He's into horses. Has nothing to do with the garden, but horses, he buys a lot of hay here, and the horses eat the hay, it passes through them, and he ends up with a lot of stuff he doesn't like in his corral. And he spreads it, puts it out in my orchard there, and I spread it around under the orchard trees, but a lot of it ends up coming back to the garden. And so now I end up, here you can see, I've taken 2 garden beds right here. I put down the compost on both of these beds. This one, after putting down about 6 inches thick of compost full of all the worms and all that decayed stuff, I put another 2 to 4 inches of manure on top of here. You can also throw manure into your compost pile. If you've got too much pine needles or dry leaves, you can add manure to help decompose, add the nitrogen to help decompose more dried material. If you have more of the dried material and you don't have enough kitchen scraps to kind of balance it out, or grass clippings, you can just add manure to your compost. But I frequently just add it directly on top of the ground. Sometimes I'll just put it as a, I've got more mature plants growing up, and I'll go in and take a wheelbarrow load and just spread it underneath there, another 4 inches thick, manure all over on this cover the ground surface with that, particularly later into the season, and it's like your stuff is all composting away. So where did it all go? I put all this stuff in there, it's disappearing. Well, the worms are ended up taking it into the soil, the plants are using it, but just pour much more of this manure on top of the ground during the season right here. Put old straw out on there. Just keep putting organic material on top of here, and they'll make use of it there. And here, like, see this bed right here, instead of manure, this bed's got some little plants, and then it's covered with, this is some of that chicken straw out of the chicken coop there. But if you don't have chicken straw, just put regular straw out there. Or you can buy a bag of chicken manure, put out some straw, and sprinkle a little chicken manure on top of it there. There's a great variety. All of the things will work. Just the principle, lots and lots of organic material, and you grow it in the ground. Now your roots, these plants will grow huge. They'll put things down into the ground there. They'll get the minerals they need deep from down there. They'll get the other stuff out here. And then, of course, you water it. And then there's a little watering thing. I've got one of just those little one that goes back and forth. I can get the whole garden. I just turn it on. You can even put it on one of those little timers if you're not somehow regular go out there. But I just turn my on and off here out and to keep the garden nice and moist right here. I want to follow through and just show you how good this grows right here. This garden bed right here is the one you saw in those pictures with the compost and then the manure on top of the compost. And then you'll see here I've got some little plants in here. Now this is in the spring, so this isn't winter garden, this is summer garden. But since I did it for the illustration, I'm going to show those are pepper plants. Don't plant peppers. Now, the cold hits, they'll be gone just like that. So don't plant peppers now. This was this spring. And then I have this little frame that I built here to support them as they grow up. I was going to let it grow up through there and support them so they didn't fall over and break. Here you can see them underneath the frame right here. I just got some of the little plants and set them in there. There they are. You see they've grown up through that layer right there, looking nice and healthy and vigorous. And you notice a few little holes in the leaves, bugs. But you know what? When you're a healthy organic garden like this, the plants will grow so fast the bugs won't get ahead of them. You don't need to spray bug spray all over your garden to keep it from, being eaten up. Matter of fact, in China, I'm told that if you go to the farmer's market, everybody looks for produce that has some bug holes in it, because then they know it's safe to eat. Because people go and spray all this poison on them to kill all the bugs to get this nice stuff, and then you're eating all this poison. And so I'm told the farmers markets, the buyers, they look for stuff with some bug holes in it there. So just a sign of a healthy garden right there, as you see a few bug holes. Here, now see it's growing up to the top of that frame already there. And by the way, don't go copy this frame. This was a mistake. I made it 26 inches tall, thinking, well, that would be about right for some pepper plants. They kept going and going and going. I should have built this 4 feet tall. Because they just kept growing and growing and growing and growing out of this composted manure right there. And of course, course, they'd get real tall, and then they would just, the weight of the peppers, and they would start breaking off and stuff. So this winter, after all the peppers are dead, I'm gonna take these apart, we're gonna weld them up and make them 4 feet tall instead of 26 inches tall. That's what starts growing in there. The plants God made are amazingly productive. They will just keep going and going and going for you. The biggest bell pepper I've ever seen in my life came out of that garden. It's amazing. And the flavor and it's just really, really good. Okay, so now that we've got our garden beds in, we're going to plant. Now we can plant seeds. I do a lot of planting with seeds here. You can buy seeds at the stores. You can order them from seed catalogs. You can order them online. And of course, you can grow your own seeds here. You can let plants go to seed in the spring instead of pulling them out, and harvest the seeds and plant those the next year. Here's some Portuguese kale going to seed right here. See it flowering up there? Now, one warning about seed, of course, if it's a hybrid plant, you probably don't want to save the seed because it's already a cross, and you'll get all kinds of weird stuff that won't necessarily match what you planted before. All of the whole family cross breed. So if you've got kale of different kinds, and you've got broccoli and cabbage and all of that kind of stuff, if you let them all go to seed, your seed is going to be, be good for making sprouts if you want to put it in and let them sprout, but you won't actually want to use it for your garden. What you can do though is let one variety flower and seed and save that one. Make sure the others, as they start to put out flowers, cut them off, trim them off, keep trimming the flowers off so there's no blooms, while they're still bud before they bloom. Keep cutting them all out there so they won't cross, breed there, and you'll get some, whatever it was, the Portuguese, most of these Portuguese kale, the red Russian kale, they do fine just from that. You pull the little, this is parsley here, I had a big patch of parsley, pull all the seeds heads off. You pull them off before they're totally dried out. So they've made, the seeds are nice and plump and full. It's starting to dry out a little bit. Pick all the seeds heads off, put them in a plastic bin, put them in a paper bag. I put them in this little sunroom where it gets hot and dry, or just put them in the house. Let them dry out till they're totally dry in the bin or in the bag. If you let them totally dry out in the garden, they get totally dry, well, that's when they cause it, and you'll lose all the seeds. They'll be like weeds coming up everywhere. You'd rather plant them where and when you want them. So get them here where they're fully mature, but not yet totally dry. Then let them dry out in the bin right here. Then just kind of crumble them in your hands. You can throw away the sticks and stems and stuff, or seed pods, depending on what kind of seed it was. And you just have millions and billions of seeds that you can use, to keep planting. Parsley is another one of those, like the cilantro. You can keep planting successive growths of it. It goes a lot longer for each growth than the cilantro. Cilantro grows and is gone pretty quick, but this right here, you can just keep going and going with that. There's some seeds sprouting up out of the compost there. That's some cilantro there. There's some parsley stuff there. I always plant a lot more than you need, and then you thin them out. No, I just plant them dry. I soak the garden, and they get soaked in the garden. And like when you plant new seeds, you need to water every day to keep that top layer, because you don't plant these very deep, just, under the surface there, just press it. Yeah. You just kind of sprinkle them there. Sometimes I'll take a little patch and I'll just sprinkle them in and just kind of, I'll take the rake and just kind of hit it like this a bunch, and some go under a little, some don't, and they'll sprout. And if you think of the kale, if you let it go to seed, it just falls on the ground, and you're going to have kale sprouting and growing everywhere. It's the same with every other seed. They're made to do that. Larger seeds you want to plant a little deeper. Peas I always plant about almost an inch deep. Here is one I took. This is red Russian kale. I just sprinkled the seed on this little spot right here, and you see it's just coming up all over the place. Now that's way too dense for your mature large kale plant. I mean, the Russian kale will get this tall. But you let it grow this way, and then you start thinning it out. All this stuff you thin out, you put in salads, you put it in a pan, steam it up, and use it. And so you're getting the immature growth out of here, and you thin it out and leave, the proper spacing for the larger, more mature plant there. A lot of the times I just go to the Lowe's or something and buy you see them, they're the little packs of different, sprouts of different kinds here that you put out, and just plant the little starts right there. Here you can see a couple of garden beds set out here. This is back before I had the wood chips on the path. See all the weeds coming up here. I had to keep cutting down right here, mowing down. But here you see, you're asking about a raised bed. See, by the time you put all this compost and stuff on top of the ground, it is sort of a raised bed. Some people take boards and make nice little squares and, control it that way. I haven't done that. There you can see some of the little plants. Those are cauliflowers there. Notice they're in a thick layer of horse manure there. They just take off and grow fine. That's all laying on top. Their roots are down in and going down into the subsoil there, but they're getting all of the nutrients from that as they go along there. Some broccoli there in that bed there who need to be mulched later after they get a little bigger. Here you can again see, this is all winter garden stuff, all of your broccolis, different kinds of kale here. Here's my helper. He's just gardening the cats. There's one cats. There's the cauliflower coming along there. There's some, this is Portuguese kale up here. Again, notice the sign of organic gardening. There's some bug holes in there, but no problem. There's still plenty of things. And of course, as it gets more mature, see how pretty soon you've got way more greens than you can ever eat just coming out of there. I mean, in a very small space. And they grow almost anywhere. This particular spot in my yard, there's a large oak tree right here. This is the north side of that oak tree. Now, everybody say you can't plant in the shade. You can plant on the sun. Greens will grow anywhere. And this gets some morning sunlight. It gets some afternoon sunlight. Middle of the day, it's almost always in the shade. Not very good for a summer garden where you want to grow tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and squash and that kind of stuff. Actually, for peppers, it is good. I grow my peppers back here because they get sunburned when you're here in the valley. You grow peppers in the full sun all day, they'll all be sunburned in the sun. We all have to put shade cloth over them. So by putting them back here, they grow big, they get plenty of light. But for greens, the leaves, they grow right here with lots of shade. Plant food everywhere. Gotcha. Here I was landscaping around by the pool there, and I planted this little mandarin tree right here, but there's a lot of empty space. Well, here, put a row of broccoli plants around there. And you're going to get big heads of broccoli out here after a while, and after you cut the heads off, there'll be little side shoots. At the end of the season, you take them out, and hey, you grew all that broccoli in a space that was just going to be, empty bark chips there. My front yard used to have this nice green lawn in it, and then a few years ago, our well went dry. Well, by the time we could get a well driller lined up, they're in great demand, everybody's well was going dry. And it was several months. Well, after several months of no water, this was totally brown and dead, non-recoverable. It would have cost a huge amount to go and put in a brand new lawn. And so instead of putting in the lawn, I just covered this with a layer of bark chips, and it became the front yard garden. This happens to be in quite full sun, as you can see here, a lot of full sun out here, great for growing all kinds of stuff. Now this is summer garden, what I'm showing you just in the next few pictures, just to show you what could happen there. This isn't winter garden stuff, but put out a bunch of seeds for butternut squash. My favorite of all of the hard squash is best flavor of any of them. Really, really excellent flavor. We like that better than any of them there. It's just a little space, and you've got a year's supply of butternut squash that actually keep pretty good and are really delicious, very nutritious. Tomatoes grow really good out there. Eggplants, they just keep coming and coming. And they keep coming. Eggplants, I use just one type, the Black Beauty eggplants, these great big purple ones, so I can save the seeds. That's a regular one, and they just keep coming back from seed every year. Summer squashes. Oh, and no summer garden would be complete without a zucchini plant. And once you plant the zucchini, what comes next? It's open season on zucchinis. You'll have to work hard to find enough place to give away all those zucchinis. Somebody was asking about raised bed. I did have in the backyard here a number of times some wooden frames. I have some large, deep ones here, all filled with stuff. Again, you will need some soil in there, but these also have no bottoms on them here. Some smaller ones over here, everything. They work fine there. Unfortunately, I hadn't really planned ahead. Later, we decided to have a sunroom on the back of the house right here, and I had to tear these all out. So plan ahead before you put a lot of effort into construction. I even got a little sprinkler pipes in there. Chinese cabbage. I just threw a bunch. This is some I had saved the seed from a previous year. Sprinkle a little Chinese cabbage. It just comes up there. Just pick all these leaves off. That's stir fry they showed you. All those leaves in there, full of nutrition, very nice flavor. There again, you see the stuff growing. Ones there, broccoli's coming up there, different kinds of kale there coming up. Here you can see the paths are in this picture. Later here, they're full of wood chips there, so I don't have the weed problem like I did before, with just bare dirt there. Spinach. Just grows and grows really good. Recognize these, our Oriental cook here would recognize. These are not Chinese, it's like bok choy, but these are little miniature ones. They just grow these little teeny leaves like that. They pop off all these little teeny leaves, toss them into your stir fries. Really, really delicious. They grow just great all winter long. And again, you can save the seeds and go again from seeds. Here you'll see again, broccoli's coming up there, plants there. If you see mushrooms coming up, that's a good sign. That means you've got a lot of organic material in your soil there. These are kind of cute little things. They're like little cups and little vases that came up right here. But there's other kinds of mushrooms that come up all over the place. It just means you've got a lot of good organic material. Mushrooms are mycelium, these fungi like little things. They grow around, they not only help decompose things, but they send mycelium, what they call mycorrhizal fungi. These actually send mycelium into the roots of plants, and they actually take material from out here, process it, bring it, and feed the plants. So you want mushrooms and stuff growing in your garden. It's a very good sign that you've got a real healthy ecosystem going on there. And the plants help out the mushrooms. They'll send some extra sugars and stuff down to help feed the mushrooms. It's just a great little arrangement they've got going there. There's some Chinese cabbage there. Peas. I save at the end of my season, I've got so many peas, so I leave the last bunch of them just on the plants. By the middle of May, they'll be drying out and no good. So I save, but let the pods go dry, take all your dry pods, pop them open, save the little seeds out of them, and plant them the next spring right there. I just plant them directly in the ground there. There you see them coming up through the ground right here. There you see along the, you'll want to put them where there's something to climb on. I've got some like metal wire. I use some of that stuff they use in concrete reinforcement, just those metal grids hanging up there. But they make little nets you can hang up, all kinds of stuff you can put up there, but they'll need something to climb on there. Here you see them growing a little taller, starting to put out their pods there, and they just keep growing and growing and putting out more blossoms and more pea pods. I mean, they are just full of pea pods. Your whole fence, you know, you put them on just covered. You can't, more than you can eat. I mean, I love those little pea pods, but you'll be amazed. Every single thing you put in the garden is so productive. It just keeps putting out more and more and more. There's some little cabbages. They're kind of close together. And kind of the timing, they may stay little or get really big. These were harvested here. Cooked them, sliced them up, cooked them up, made some into salads. Swiss chard, you get it, comes in all different colors. You get some of these really bright red stems, you get others with yellow. Salads. Your salads grow great all winter here. There's some romaine lettuce starting there, some red stuff down there. Here's some different, some little curly oak leaf lettuces, different kinds. It's just dozens and dozens of different kinds of lettuces here. I do what they call, I just don't grow like a head of lettuce and harvest the head of lettuce. You just go out there and you just pick a leaf here, pick a leaf there, pick a leaf there until you have a bowl full of salad. And then the plant keeps growing. You pick some more leaves the next day. You go out every day and pick another bowl of salad from there. You just keep on picking bowls of salad and it keeps growing. Yes. They get bitter in the summer when it starts getting hot. During the winter here when it's cool, no. But if they get old and they're starting to go to seed and stuff like that, which usually more touch me, then yeah. If you taste one, it's better, just pull it out, it's done. Throw it away, add it to your compost pile. But yeah, they grow like this. They won't be bitter, these stages here. You notice these pictures. See, this is really early, immature stages right here. That's when you want to start picking the leaves. Don't wait till they get like this. Pick these leaves. These are what you want to eat. Keep picking those leaves. They'll keep growing more. And you keep picking and picking them, and they'll keep putting more out. They've got nice roots down there. They'll keep growing. There's some cilantro. We talked about that. Red Russian kale, again, one of my favorite kales right there. Really good. More Red Russian kale there. Really like it steeped up. Chinese cabbage growing there. Cabbage is there. You know, I saved the Red Russian kale seeds, and you notice, what's that mean? We're trying to quit already? We're not. Yes. Yeah, all of those you can keep going there. Be surprised what you might find in your garden. Broccoli, you pick, it makes a nice center head, you cut that off, but there, and you get side shoots out. Scottish kale, anybody recognize that? Fava beans, they're growing out there. If you haven't grown fava beans, plant them like peas in the fall, let them grow all winter and you get them out there. Some cabbage and cauliflower there, some stuff in the garden there. Cabbage there, really good there. Some spinach, cauliflower, cabbage, radishes grow really good in the winter here. You want to pick your radishes. They look at the size of that one. Here, that's half of a radish there. Look at the size of that. And this particular radish was sweet, juicy, crunchy. It wasn't hot. It wasn't tough. It was like, wow. There's broccoli, cauliflower there, garlic and onions you put in the fall. You just break your head of garlic apart into these little cloves. Use the big outside cloves. If there's little teeny ones in the middle, just use that for cooking. Just use the nice big outside ones. Plant them out there, with a little pointy end sticking out the same way they came right there. Here you'll see some starting to come up in this box here. Here's the same box a little bit later. Notice they're much bigger there. Here's the same thing out in one of the garden beds there. Notice they're growing a little bit there, getting bigger there. Here they're getting ready to pick. When they start to get a couple of leaves yellowish brown on the bottom, that means they're ready to pull up. And there you got a crop of garlic. Onions, the same thing. You buy these little teeny onion sets, set them out the same way in the fall. They'll start to put up little tops, and they may slow down during the winter, but towards spring, they'll really take off and put on big bulbs. Put a lot of manure on your onions and garlics. They really like a lot of nitrogen there to grow nice big bulbs for you. Artichokes. Artichokes will just, these thistle-like greens, they'll sit there and grow all winter, and then in the spring, they'll shoot up these blossoms. You cut the buds off there, and you've got some delicious artichokes there. Here's some Italian kale and some broccoli there to go in. Chickens have their donations to our table as well. You get the big heads of broccoli. But notice here, after you cut the head off out of the center, pull the plant out. Look at all these side shoots that come out. A week or two later, pick all of those, and you've got another head's worth of broccoli to steam up and eat there. this is broccolini. It doesn't make a big head, it just makes lots of little shoots. This is a purple broccolini there. And they just puts out all of these little purple shoots. Here's a whole bouquet of them picked right here, just ready to go into the pan and steam. And by the way, these purple ones, when you steam them, they turn green. All the purple goes away. The same if you've done purple green beans, when you steam them up, they turn green again. The peas, we talked about those. Really nice harvest off of the peas. Steam them up good, you'll love those. This variety here, instead of making those flat pods, they have a little round type pod, but it's, again, a juicy, sweet one. You eat the whole pod and everything, just like those Morgan sugar pod peas there. Beets, beet greens are really delicious. You plant a lot of beet seeds and then thin them out as you go, and you eat everything you thin out. They make little, first you just can eat the little greens like salad stuff. Later on, you have little baby beets and you'll eat those. And then later on, you'll get larger beets that you can eat the beet roots. There's more nutrients in the beet tops than there is the beet roots, but the beet roots have more sugar in them. They're sweet, you know, they're the to get there. So the point of all this is it's really easy to grow a really lush garden. You just grow it God's way, put the organic material on top of the ground, and it will grow for you. Water it. That's all it takes. The next day. Yeah, you don't need to wait. You can do it the same day if you're really into it. You know, just whenever you get around to it. There's been sort of a waiting period in your compost pile, but it's already composted. You've got it out there, and the extra manure on top, again, it's on top of the ground. It's not down in the ground. You know, if you put a whole lot of fresh manure and dig it into the ground, you're going to burn something, maybe. Yeah, you know, I've seen people burn something. But we don't put it in the ground. We lay it on top. Just lay everything on top of the ground. Let the roots go down. It'll send roots up and the worms will take it down. It all comes really naturally there. So. About what? The stuff that I've shown you here seems to do fine with freezes. I didn't put them in there. I could show you some pictures of them. I went out and took pictures. They're totally all covered with frost. Outlined, every single vein and leaf is frosted out and white with the frost. And then the sun comes out and the frost melts and they seem just fine. And kale particularly, once it gets one of those frosts, it's like the flavor somehow gets sweeter once it gets a frost on it. So, who's going to grow a garden? Okay, it's really simple. And it's really healthy. You're going to get way more nutrients than anything you can get in the store. And it's fun. Gardening is fun to do. Okay, Pam, there. We're right on time. 7:30.
Okay, so now I'm ready. Are you guys ready to grow your garden? It's much easier than I thought. Thank you very much. Very good. We want to thank all of our chefs tonight for the food. Did you like the dinner, the salad and everything? Can we give them a hand? And Deborah made the cake also. You want to tell them about that real quick? Did you like the cake? It was a spice cake, and so as we were wondering, what are we going to put on this spice cake? It was good by itself, but we thought it would be nice if we put an icing or something. So Jan and I just kept going back and forth, and finally we went to Sprouts, and to our surprise, we found for the first time, we found an organic icing, and we were like, well, it's probably going to have something in it we can't. So we looked at it, and guess what? This icing. You can make your own birthday cake now with an icing. It has organic powdered sugar, organic palm fruit oil that has organic coconut oil, organic tapioca, sea salt, and natural vanilla flavor. So is that good or what? So now you can find an icing that you can actually put on the cake. Okay, we are going to have Dr. Ben Pruitt come for the October meeting, and he's gonna talk about peripheral vascular disease and how, what we can do to help prevent vascular problems. And then, what did I say we were gonna have right after that? Do you remember? I forgot already. We are going to have Sunday, the 7th of October. We're going to do a home remedy, natural remedies day. So from 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock on Sunday, October 7th, here in this room. We're gonna have a lot of fun with that. So we hope you'll come and enjoy that with us as well. Okay, and now we have prizes.